Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tips and Tricks series. In today's video we will be focusing on controller calibration. Now this was put into the game in a patch about 3 patches ago from memory. At the time I played with it, I didn't like it, and since then I've done a lot of tweaking it and playing with it, and I've never got it to what I like, and I've always just ran the game as it came in the box, never gone on it let it stock until I feel like I hit a bit of a sweet spot. So in today's video I'm going to show you what I personally run, along with what everything does and how to experiment with them for your own good. Now obviously you can try out my settings, but my settings won't work for everyone. I'll tell you that straight up. It will not work for everyone, so some of you might get lucky, some might be terrible for you, might be worse altogether. So I'll explain how to understand what you're changing and what to look out for when you change it, and bit of tips and tricks basically to set it up for yourself. So enough chatter, let's get on track. So here we are in the menu. Now to find the calibration menu, press the options button, which is pause on most games, go to controls, configuration, and then over to the 4th tab, which is calibration. Now we have separate subcategories, which are steering, accelerate, front brake, reverse, rear brake, clutch, and rider weight. These last 3 here, rear brake, clutch, and rider weight. Rider weight we'll start with, I feel is pointless. I don't see any use of rider weight in the calibration menu because I've changed loads of ways and it doesn't really affect much in my opinion. Now that's just my opinion. Again, I'd advise playing with yourselves and just getting a base feeling. If you think it makes a slight difference in any aspect and improves it, then run it. But to me it's like a bit of placebo. I don't really feel any different. Go back to the clutch. Most riders in this game will use the clutch and the rear brake as a button, and what I mean by that is you're either pressing it or you're not pressing it, which means you're going from 0 to 100% and there's no in between. Your front brake and your accelerator or your throttle is on a trigger, which means you can press it a slight amount. It's realistic, it's to add depth to the game. So if I wanted to brake at 67%, in theory I could. Now it would be incredibly difficult to hit that number, but for example of the calibration I could go to 60%. I can show you here. So my clutch is A, I can press it on and off. I can't press the clutch halfway, it's going on fully. Rear brake's the same, it's RB, on, off, on, off. My front brake, I can change it the whole time. So I said 67 on my rear brake, so I'm going to slowly try and get close to 67, and there we go, 67 and a half. I can hold it there. I can't do that with the clutch, on, off, while all having that range of movement. So I can slowly add the brake on, whereas if it's the rear brake I can't slowly do it, I can only press the button. So that's what I mean by with the rear brake, the clutch, and the rider weight, that you can't really do much with them. Now the only thing I will add for the clutch is these filter pressures here, filter pressure and filter release. Filter pressure adds a small bit of a delay. So what I mean is, so for the clutch for example, why I say this is a good idea, if you constantly jump to start, say you keep twitching, you leave the accelerator, or you're too good at getting starts and the game keeps penalizing for jump starts, it does happen online, you can put a small, so we'd say 15%, and that happens is the first initial inputs of the clutch release will be slowed down. Now it'll be something you have to play with to see, but you will slow down, so it might just stop you from getting them jump starts. Filter release is that they'll hold on to for a bit longer, so they'll hold the clutch for longer. So that's ideally not what you'd want. This slows it down, that holds it for longer, so that would kind of prevent you from taking it off. Going back to the rear brake, again, filter pressure, the rear brake is such, it's not a powerful tool, it's a very useful tool, but it's not powerful. You won't have, I don't think, again personally it makes any difference. I've tried it, don't feel anything. Now I'm going to go back straight away to steering. So with steering you have dead zone, linearity, saturation, and then you have your 2 filters. High saturation will add input with less movement. What I mean by that is that you'll have added input with less movement. So when the controller, you're adding inputs, you're turning, so we'll say you're turning at 6, so 35 degrees lean. That's what it feels like in the controller, but the bike will be slightly less. So you'll have to overturn the bike to get the bike to turn. So it'll make a bit of an understeer effect. Adding the other way around, so with the lower one it will end up that you'll move it less and the bike will move more. So what that feels like in game is you turn the bike in a small bit and the bike nearly goes to full lean. It makes the bike really feel like, so you're kind of, it's like playing it with the D-pad. Remember years ago you playing the old MotoGP games, you had to play with the D-pad and you go from standing still to turning, standing still to turning. You can make it feel slightly like that. Whereas if you increase it, it feels less, that you feel like you could really turn the bike in. I actually think it's a great tool if you wanted to make the game more realistic. You'd increase the saturation. Now you can't go any less, but it will make it slightly different depending on which way you play it. So if you made it higher, I feel it makes the bike much heavier. It makes the bike feel more like a bike. It's not just something on the screen. It feels really realistic. It's hard to get the bike through corners. Whilst understeer, it's a bit heavy and increases everything in every other aspect. Do I think that maybe in the future we could see lobbies where you can change these so everyone has to run the same calibration to make the bikes different? I think it would be a cool idea. Whether it be used or not, I don't know. It would be quite realistic, I think, for maybe league racing, stuff like that. But anyway, going back to, so we're going to go to linearity less. We'll actually cover dead zone first. A dead zone is simple. If you press the button 10%, we put a 10% dead zone. The first 10% of the button, nothing will happen. It will be a dead zone, clues in the name. So we'll say for steering, this is the only obvious one. Braking, accelerating, I don't see why you'd have one. It's realistic, you don't really damage your triggers in playing games. It's your thumbstick that take the beating over the time that they start to drift and they have their own little dead zone. So you want to improve your feeling with controller, you play with your dead zones. But if you have a new controller, or if whatever, if you play on a wheel for car games, these all carry across the car games as well. They do the same thing. The words mean the same thing. So if you're decreasing or increasing linearity on the F1 game, you'll have the same effect as what I'm saying in this game. I'm just covering for GP because that's the main game I play. But anyway, I always have this on 0 because I have a good controller. I don't have any stick drift, so no need to cover it. So we'll move on now to linearity. If you have high linearity, the bike feels heavy. Base is slow. It slows your movements ever so slightly is what I looked at. Now you can see everything else starts at 0 and goes to 100. This goes to 200%, so you can really ramp it up or drop it down. So the bike will feel heavy with with high linearity. It'll feel heavy, so it really slows down your inputs and kind of makes it a bit dull and kind of vague the feeling. A low linearity, so if you went below 100, so closer to 50, maybe 60%, the bike will feel light. It'll feel really arcadey. You'll go from 0 to full lean really quickly. You will change direction quickly. You'll be quite unrideable, I reckon, from my testing. Wouldn't be able to do it myself personally. And yeah, that would be, I don't really see the point of it. It just makes it feel all over the place. So my own personal preferences are 0, 50 and 100% for this. For some reason they have that 100 to 200 instead of 0 to 100. I don't know what way they wanted to do, but so 100%, 0, 0 for the steering. So again, with the steering, if you wanted to filter pressure, so your initial turning will be slower, and then that'll be like in let's say Call of Duty aim acceleration. The more you turn, the faster it gets. You could do it with this if you went for maybe 35% filter pressure. The first 35% will be slower and it'll gradually pick up, and then you hit the 35% and you get a full kind of a kick, so it will jump. In my opinion, it's not good. You want consistent time, the whole time you want it to be consistent and move steady. You won't want to jump across the screen because then it's guesswork. Then filter release is the same. It'll just hold the input for longer. So if you're turning in and if you try and set the bike up, it'll add a bit of delay. I don't understand why you'd want that. Again, some person out there might. I'm just explaining it. We'll move on to the accelerate. Exact same thing. So like exactly what I said with the linearity and saturation. It'll speed it up, slow it down. It'll make it feel quicker and slower. So it'll give you really weird throttle trajectories. Leave them at 100 for myself. Again, play with them. Same thing in dead zone. For some reason, if your initial press of your right trigger doesn't work, increase your dead zone. It'll fix that. It'll give it a more reactive feeling. Filter pressure again. Now this is where I actually run 10%. This is the first thing in the controls of the calibration I actually adjust myself. Why I run that is the first 10% of the throttle. So the first 10% of the throttle input I have just dulled down a tiny bit. Now you can play with this. I've played with it at 50%, and I find it works best on bikes when you have less traction. So if you're riding a 500, so if I was doing a 500cc two-stroke league, I might run it at something like 40%. Then the first 40% is it's filtered slightly, just gives, it's like having a small bit of built-in traction control to your controller. So sometimes in the wet it's handy. Now I leave at 10% just at the moment. I don't really feel a difference, but I run it as a mental thing. Filter release again, you don't want this. You don't want to. This is like the idea of having a stuck throttle. The throttle will stay open for an extra second or two after you've released it. Don't know why you'd want that. Moving on to the brake. This is one I have again used, so I have changed myself. Dead zone, don't need it. Same as the throttle. Linearity again, same as the other two. So increases, decreases, will feel faster, slower, and feel a bit stiffer and a bit looser in different ways. So again, play with these as much as you want. I personally don't like either of these. I like the way it feels from the base. Filter pressure, once again, so it slows down your braking. This is probably the best asset you have in the game in this calibration, in my opinion. everyone in this game at some point struggles with the stoppie. The stoppie is caused by aggressive weight transfer, and what I mean by that is when you press the brake and your weight goes from the rear of the bike forward and you're slightly have small lean, you're kind of coming across the racing line, you're defending, the bike snaps. The bike's really stiff, so as soon as you try and make it do something it doesn't want, it'll snap, it'll flex, it'll do stoppie. Having a 25% again just slows the initial bite of the brakes. Now I can brake as late anywhere on any track with 0 and 25%. It doesn't decrease your braking, it just smooths out, makes a bit like butter in the first initial phase, and what that does, decreases the chances of stoppages. You can be a little more aggressive on the initial grab of the brake. Some people are very aggressive and that they just go from 0 to 100, they hold and squeeze as hard as they can, and that's how they brake. This will be, if you were to ride like that, I'd run maybe 45%, but I'm very smooth, so I tend to run a bit less. But it is one of the best ways you can decrease your stoppies. Now I still advise running setups because it doesn't fix it fully, you still can get it, but it does rule it out a small bit. Filter release, again, this would just be counterproductive to run this in my opinion. If you were coming into a corner, you're braking and you're just about to lose the front, you can feel it going and you release the brake and the brake holds for an extra 2/10 and you crash. I don't see why. Again, maybe there's someone out there who'll want it, I don't know, but 25% is what I run for. I don't run anything on the rear brake, the clutch or the right brake, I already covered them. Accelerator, I'll just cover what I've done. So filter pressure 10% and 25% in the brake for filter pressure. That is pretty much it. Now again, this is some kind of complex stuff. It isn't the most straightforward. It is quite confusing. It did take me a while to make this video because if you change your linearity in your, say, your steering, you'll increase that and decrease, or if you increase both of this and decrease this, everything feels weird. It doesn't feel nice. It's quite tricky. Now I will advise changing the steering one at a time because they do different things, and if you change them both at the same time you're going to get a weird effect. And I do notice too as well, it sometimes can glitch. If you change this online and you go and change it again, it doesn't. I'll give an example. When the game changed the physics, when they brought in that bit of a dead zone, they had a built-in Z zone with the other physics before the patch, I had to decrease my linearity to about, I think, 75%. If you were playing online and you say you had it at 75% and then you increased it to 80%, it never took away the old one, it would add it onto it and make it really weird and unplayable. So it's still quite glitchy, so it has taken me quite a while to get this video up, just because of the fact a lot of the time it broke when I was trying to use it, and I had made videos and I was kind of going back through my notes and thinking, well, the linearity isn't working, and when I increase the linearity it's decreasing saturation through my feeling. So I was like, I don't know what's going on here. So I've done all my testing now offline in time trial, and it looks to be the most accurate I've had so far. So everything I said in the video is the most at right now. So currently, if they change the game again in the future, which they probably will, this probably will mean nothing to anyone because they'll probably change and break it again as usual. But look, I'm trying to help you now, I'm doing the best I can. So yeah, if you, again, any questions, please comment down below. I'll do my best to help with these. These aren't the most straightforward. What I can do is, if people have questions on, I feel like the bike turns in too quick, I can help you maybe dial that out through the calibration, because I know obviously everyone won't be able to follow this to a T and be able to implement it themselves. Some people will like to ask me, I accelerate and the bike snaps, how do I fix that? Can I add a bit of filter pressure to the accelerator? Is that what I do, or is it filter release? I don't know the difference between the two. XYZ. Comment down below if you have any certain issues, and what I do is I'll try and give you a guide or guide you in the direction of what you need to change. You can change it for yourself and then play with it when you have an understanding of what's actually on you feel in the controller. Anyway, I've rambled on for way too long once again. Thank you all for watching, and I shall see you in the next episode, not so distant future. Bye bye, thanks for watching.